just my crotch here.
Yeah.
It's like LBJ. Yeah, I want to get my pants tailored. I'll leave some room down there for where the nuts hang down near your bunghole. Actual quote.
Welcome back. It is week 137 on the Out on That Line podcast. I'm Jeff with my co-host Alex. And Alex, how are you this week?
I am riled up, Jeff. I am fired up, Jeff. I'm ready to rock and roll.
That was a very the very Dewey Cox look.
Yeah, you get the little pompadour
yeah.
going.
Yeah.
My winter pompadour that I grow.
Yeah, wrong kid died.
Wrong kid. I'm smell blind. Yeah. Oh, Paul. Don't pull my pin. Don't you pull my fucking pin. I did a nice, wacky radio DJ entrance. Don't you dare pull my pin about doing
you're already,
snacks.
Just like you said, you're riled up for it right now.
But I am. I'm riled. I'm like a stag. I'm hoofing at the ground over here.
Is there a better musical movie
than that?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a larger conversation. That's a whole episode. That that has its old other set of criteria.
I think we should do that as a separate episode. Do music 100%. Movies. I think that would be fantastic because we could talk a little Eddie and the Cruisers. That's one I might. Yeah, that's one I might put up there in the rankings. The movie that it kind of makes fun of the most, Walk the Line, was pretty good in its own right. I think we've had some schlock, and we can certainly touch on that One Love movie about Bob Marley, which I heard is a steaming pile. As I suspected. Just the trailers looked trash. It just didn't look like it was going to be a real good lived-in experience at all. But that would be a great idea for a future episode, I think. And you know who else we could probably get involved with that is our frequent co-host here, Tanner.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, the number one fill-in man.
Yeah,
and he'll fill you right in, man. Don't you worry.
I say we put him right in the middle. Maybe we can record in Paris, if you know what I'm saying.
I see what you're saying. I see what you're putting down. Perhaps London Bridge. And it ain't gonna fall, baby.
Yeah, Tanner Tan the Duchess.
I don't know what's happening right now.
Well, we are here. So we did quite a beefy long episode last week recapping the Grammys. And it was, I think it was a pretty good episode. You should go back and check it out. But this week we're going to get back to our old tricks. We're going to talk about an album. We're going to talk about a band that has been mentioned, I think, a lot of times on this podcast, mostly by you, I'm pretty sure. And we're going to talk about Future Islands. And we're going to talk about, and I have to look up the name here. People who aren't there anymore. When they get past 3 words, I really feel like I'm shooting from the hip if I don't have it sitting in front of me. So I always feel like I got to look those up. But I had heard a little bit of Future Islands just being friends with you and Tanner, because I think it's a band that you guys, I don't know if you're super deep into them, but it does seem like you're very familiar with them. Now, to me, I didn't really know what to expect. I just heard those couple songs. I don't know why the name just makes me not want to take it seriously, because I think it is music to be taken seriously. I really did enjoy, I feel like this was a great experience for me to listen to them for the first time. And I'm interested, if you do have a lot more experience with them, kind of what you think about this compared to their past work, because I don't really have a big base to draw from there.
Well, I think it's funny that you think the name is dumb, because it has the dumbest origins ever. They were trying to pick between 2 different names. One of them was Future Shoes, and one of them was something, or Shoes Already. Future Shoes and Shoes Already were the 2 names they were trying to pick between. And then they were fuck it, we'll do or maybe it was like Shoe Islands or something. I can't remember what it was. But the point being, they had two shitty band names and they lopped off two parts and mushed them together, and that's how they got Future Islands. So it's not like, Grateful Dead, fucking Phil Lash, his 81-year-old ass tells the story about like, oh, Sherry opened a dictionary and he pointed to Grateful Dead and then they read the description of it and it was like very mystical and on brand for us. So now we're the Grateful Dead. So like, it's not that kind of story. And that's one of the things I really love about Future Islands. And we can get into like all the wackiness, and it's like Future Islands is not wacky, but it's made by people you can tell are pretty wacky, who are taking the thing totally seriously, but you can tell they don't take themselves overly seriously.
Yes. And I definitely got that idea. Now, there was a couple thoughts I had during this where I feel like if the National sounded more like this, because this guy, I can't remember what his name is, that is the singer in Future Islands. This guy has a fantastic voice. Like when he needs to like draw on that, he really can. And I feel like he does sing a lot of times in a very almost, I don't want to say monotone, because there is definitely still some kind of melodic elements to it, but definitely in a lower register, not super dynamic or anything like that. And that's like the entirety of the National, is that guy singing like that. And then it just kind of gets like louder mumbling in certain parts is kind of just how he does it. If that sounded more like this, and also if the two newest Arctic Monkeys albums sounded more like this, I would be into both of those other things a whole lot more. I feel like Future Islands, at least this album, and I probably am going to go back and listen to quite a bit more just to get an idea, because I did enjoy this overall. Spoiler alert. Like this album sounded like everything both of those groups were trying to do, and just actually doing it well, and actually doing it in a way where there's some emotional weight to it. There's still a lot of fun to be had. And I kind of get the sense that that's what they're all about, and Future Islands, it didn't sound, it sounds like kind of just a cheesy, funky band name. It doesn't sound like it should mean anything. And I guess you explain it doesn't really mean anything, but it really, I think the way they put this album together, it was the same kind of instrumentation on every song, but it never sounded stale. And that to me, I felt like is kind of the mark of a great album, is you have a theme that you're really sticking to, but within that, you don't really have to branch out. Like you have enough ideas within that and are confident in. It's a 43-minute album. It's not like it's a super short experience. And I felt like at no point did I really feel like I wanted it to be over, like I was looking forward to the end or hoping for something better. It was just a really nice experience throughout. There were really great peaks. I say valleys in just the dynamic sense, and not that it's like a low point in the music or anything. But it was really, I think, well thought out. I don't know if they're known for that in the rest of their catalog, but they've been at it a while. I looked back. And I don't really recognize any of the other songs. I played a few of them just to be like, hey, maybe I've heard these guys before. And I really don't, unless there's some deep cuts that I happen to have heard. But it's certainly something I think I'm going to go back and check out.
They are super consistent. It's not, the dog just showed up to lick my water bottle. Hey buddy. They're super consistent, like not just through this album, because you're right. It really stood out to me. I'm like, I compare it to something like Beach House, where that fucking absolute juggernaut, just like hour and a half long, but it was varied. And I also went into it liking Beach House, but it was constantly kind of throwing you different things. Like Runaway doesn't sound the same as Pink Funeral. But it's different with Future Islands. They're just like wildly consistent with the sound, the instrumentation that they use, but it's consistency. It's not like a lack of imagination. They're just so good at what they're doing. And the one of the things that makes this like such a wild experience in a lot of ways is it's a very subtle breakup album. This is a breakup album. And I just think like I've never heard one like this. I hate to like unfairly malign the Hayley Williams album, But I was like, girl, this is too on the nose. Like, this is hard. This is a hard listen. I'm pretty depressed. And then this was like way more like you pretty much immediately get what Herring's talking about. But at the same time, there's just these great lyrics like, I'm like a lion in the night, that's sinking pride. It's just like great. It, like for as fun as the music is, it's like this like great quintessential synth pop. On top of that, you have these like kind of bizarre, depressing lyrics on like the most consistent sound. So it's like one of the things I really appreciated about this album.
Yes, and I will say, for me, the best example of that was "Give Me the Ghost Back." That song, and there was a run. So "Say Goodbye," "Deep in the Night," "Say Goodbye," "Give Me the Ghost Back." Those three in a row was where I was already enjoying myself. Like the first couple songs, I liked, how they sounded, but they didn't really, I feel like not being familiar with the band, it takes you a little bit maybe to kind of get into what they're getting at. And once you understand that, and I really, really started understanding it with those three songs. And when I hit "Give Me the Ghost Back" and they really start laying on that kind of dance beat and those heavy synths, and you start really listening to the lyrics, like, okay, I understand the music. I get that now. Let me listen to what he's saying, because his voice, I feel like that's the first song where he starts to really get some cool things, some really dynamic runs with his voice. And you understand he's not just like good at writing lyrics and writing these melodies and this kind of thing. Like he's got a really strong voice as well. And when he lets that rip, it hits in that same kind of register, I think, like, what's the guy's name in the National? Is it Berninger or something?
Fuck if I know.
Yeah,
I don't
whatever.
give two shits about the National.
It's that same kind of register, but he pulls so much more out of it. It's such a warmth to that voice that it has weight to it. And I don't know how else to really describe it, but it's just, I feel like some of the all-time great singers had that same kind of draw to their voice, where it's a little different than what you're used to hearing. It wasn't this super crisp and clean, kind of tenor or soprano or whatever, where you really hear that biting sound. It was just so well-rounded and well picked in where he decided to kind of unleash that. Like he understood the dynamics in how they're going to play emotionally as well as sonically. And I felt like it was always perfectly placed at every point in the album, not just those three songs, but everywhere else as well. When you were supposed to be feeling a certain way, he was singing a certain way. And when you were supposed to be a little more riled up, his voice was a little more riled up. And I think it was so perfectly done. The more I talk about it, honestly, the more I like it.
It comes from the project before this too, like a lot of that really weird energy that he's got in this sort of like sing-song kind of like almost like vampiric kind of sound to it at certain times. Like I think about it on King of Sweden when he's just like the word cursive. It's got that kind of like Dracula-esque kind of lilt to it. Finely honed from the project he was in before this, which was super inspired by krautrock. So they're doing like Kraftwerk shit, and he would come in like a white tuxedo with his hair slicked back, and his name was like Count Orlok something or other, and he would do a German accent. He was like Klaus Nomi, you know that guy from the 80s, the weird hair and the painted face, the giant
I'm sure
bow tie.
I bet if I picked up like or saw a picture of him, I would know who you're talking about.
It was one of those type of things. So then to translate that stage presence, because that's really what it is you, even when you're listening to this album, it's like Sam Herring has stage presence first and foremost. And he would say that too. He's like, I'm a musician, I'm a performer, I'm a singer. The total lack of technique even led to him giving himself like vocal cord edema. So there were like notes he stopped being able to hit. But then you hear him on something like King of Sweden, and it's like, oh, indeed, at the end. And I'm like, well, that sounded great. So what notes can't you hit, you motherfucker?
Yeah. And he went to a music school, right? I forget which one. I was reading the description on Spotify, but I think he was like trained, professionally trained to do this. So that's where I think you hear such good production from. I think because he's just got a really good ear for what's going to work, I guess, overall. And I think they pride themselves on like not using guitar. From what they have this really rockin' sound, and they just use basically electronic instruments for that.
Give it
And
up to the rhythm section on that one, man. The
yeah.
drums and the bass, just they're always doing interesting shit and
Mhm.
not making up like guitar is missed. I don't think it's missed in something like this. I mean,
No.
the synth is all you like more than enough
Yeah.
because it's so fortified by a weird leading man presence with a voice that isn't goofy. It's incredibly unique and just a super tight rhythm
Mhm.
section.
Yeah. It was really, I get the same feel about the production of it as when I listen to like Wolfpack, because it's just like so perfect in every sense. Like it doesn't sound like there's any mistakes being made, but it also doesn't sound like it's really uptight. Like I feel like it's perfectly in the pocket. It hits every single note it needs to. I think music like this, you don't really expect the kind of emotional weight that you do get from the lyrics. And you could listen to this whole album, just have a great time with the music and not pay attention to a bit of that. I think the music is well enough done, but I think you're really going to sell yourself short if you don't kind of take the whole thing in. And I think songs like King of Sweden, fantastic. Say Goodbye, Deep in the Night to me was the most I don't know if there was saying it was like sonically different from the rest of the album is like the right way to put it, but I felt like it was the one I kind of drew me in first. It had this kind of dark sort of energy to it. I don't know if you got the same sense from it, but to me, that's where I really started to realize like, oh, this sort of music is not just upbeat and happy and going to have these big bright choruses all the time. Like you can get, this is just another form of emo music, just with a different kind of sound behind it. Because you really start to listen to the lyrics in these songs and you realize like there's not a lot of happiness to be had here, no matter what the music is telling you. It's like the classic example of, what song sounds super happy, but is in fact extremely dark. And there's so many examples of that, but I feel like kind of this whole album is an example of that.
Well, because it's not like it gets away with it because it's not like beating you down, being
Mhm.
depressed about it. It is 100% like the dissolution of a relationship. It's a breakup album, but you don't listen to the lyrics and be like, I'm so bummed out.
Mhm.
It's really like he's like like sublimating all these feelings into these songs that aren't like down in the dumps total misery, which
Mhm.
is what makes them like it's part of what makes them so pleasant to listen to, paired with the way that the music sounds and the way that it moves. So I don't know. The thing is, I've always liked Future Islands quite a bit, but I would never sit there and be like, I'm really an aficionado and I
Mhm.
can, tell you everything there is to know. I know like my fundamentals. And in preparation for this episode, I went back and I listened to the entire thing, the whole catalog,
Okay.
just like one or two a day at work. Cause my job is just like heads down, plow through shit. Like I
Yeah.
have a never ending pile of work and it's just get to it. You crank up that standing desk, you crack a fresh Celsius, you take it to the fucking dome, you put on your blue light blockers and you get moving. And I chose to take that ride with Future Islands at least once a day, and I'm like deeply hooked now. I'm
Yeah.
deeply, deeply hooked now.
I think it's a worthy endeavor. I think if the rest of their stuff is as good a quality as this, then I think I'm in for a treat, because I think there's what, 6 more albums they've released outside of this.
Oh God, something like that.
I mean, I think that's at least, I think.
This might be number 6.
Yeah, and I
Look,
think I think for me, I had so much fun listening to this entire album, and this is one. Usually, I'll listen to an album like 3 times when we do the show. I think this one I've popped through like 6. You
yes,
know, and it just because it doesn't get old. It's great music to drive to. It's great music just to like when you're just hanging out. Like Marlo was off doing wife of the pod. Marlo was off doing a conference in Frisco yesterday, and she wasn't going to be home till like later in the afternoon. And I just put that on the big speakers and had myself grand old time. I mean, it was so perfect for that because it's got the energy that I love from this kind of synth wave style music, but it also had the weight that I love in the lyrics that you hear from like great old country songwriters. I think that's where you get a combination of those things where there's as much thought put into what he's saying as how he's saying it and how they're playing it. I think when you have those three things at such a high level, you get a 100% buy it from me.
Yo, yes, I would be remiss if I didn't say that I had already purchased this. So it's an automatic buy it. For all the reasons that I mentioned before, in terms of the consistency and staying consistent to something that is weird without being weird for weird's sake. It's not all these like standout production choices because like arbitrarily that feels fun. It's as weird as it is to say, it's disciplined, but it's not rigid. It's just completely consistent in what they come to do every single time. And it's just fun, great music. Like you said, the energy. Like I have a 10-minute power stop slightly uphill on the way to work, as Google Maps would have you know. Thank you very much. Fitbit registers the power stop, okay? Just so we're all clear. And you put this on, and I did this morning. I put this in, and I was just like, just, and not like running exaggeratedly. I just felt like so lifted. Because sometimes I go in with the backpack on, and I'm like, I feel like I'm rucking. I feel like I have a 60-pound backpack on. I'm just like so flattened today. And then you put this on, and you're like, nope, absolutely not. I'm going to walk into a moving car and cut it in half. And it's just like the perfect mood booster, perfect mood enhancer. I think, like you said, you can enjoy it a lot of different ways. Not every album we listen to is like that. So you can't really miss with this one. And this one did not miss. So it's a buy it.
Yeah. I think I'm going to do this one, the old vinyl and CD job. The vinyl just for the collection. And I'm vain like that. And the CD to actually listen to.
You fucking hipster. The new wave, the post wave of hipster.
Have you seen the kind of reveals of Casey Musgraves' new album that's going to be coming out in gosh, I think it gets released middle of March, so just a few weeks away.
That's soon.
Yeah, so I did already ordered the vinyl and the CD and got Marlo the sweatshirt, but it sounds like she's going into her like kind of weird folky live on a grassy hill kind of era.
You can take me for that ride.
Yeah, and
I'd let that happen.
It sounds like it's kind of going to be a cross between Golden Hour and Star-Crossed.
I'll take it.
As far as the sound of Golden Hour, and then from the first single that's been released, kind of the lyrical feel of Star-Crossed, I think.
Oh no, literally
so we'll
the worst part.
Yeah, so we'll say, I don't know, Star-Crossed, I feel like that's one aged like bread for sure for me.
Yeah, Star-Crossed was a whiff. It did one of these.
Yeah. I think Dua Lipa's is coming out pretty shortly as well. So I think we're going to be bricked up pretty soon here.
We have an embarrassment of riches. And again, my job, I won't tell you the whole thing. My boss got fired and new sheriff in town. And now it's just like, instead of hanging out, having cool conversations with a guy that's like, yeah, I was in Russia after the fall of the Berlin Wall, man. It's fucking crazy. Oh, and I love LCD Sound System. And I love Kraftwerk. And I love They Might Be Giants. And I'm this like weird individual. Well, he was too much of an individual for the place that I work. It's like canned his ass. But yeah, new regime. So now it's just like mountain of work every day. So I have been listening to 75% more music during the day. just crushing albums, taking them down like 5, 6 in a day. Unbelievable. Spotify never not going unless I'm going to a meeting.
That's impressive. I think that's something that, I think people can hear about the albums that you listen to if they just check out youtube.com/C/out on that line. They can see all the singles that you listen to. You've put up a bunch of those lately. You should go check those out. Catch up on our Megan Thee Stallion and Nicki Minaj beef. Alex has a reaction to the Megan Thee Stallion song Hiss. We have a whole episode dedicated to Pink Friday 2. I'll hold off how we felt about it. You can go back and check it out yourself, but that's going to be at youtube.com/C/out on that line. And Alex, was there anything else today that you felt a burning desire that you needed to talk about?
There's something I need to say, because if we're going to flip-flop roles today, then I want to do this right. I want to tell everybody, thank you for watching. And until next time. I did it this time.
Yeah.